Yo, welcome back to the channel, everyone. Hope you guys are all doing well. It's Oscar, and we're back again with another banger. Today we're going to be talking about casino drop chips, what they're used for, their significance in casinos, their rarity, and some cool facts about them. So buckle up, let's enjoy the ride. Like I mentioned, today we're going to be talking about casino drop chips. And what I mean by drop chips are chips that are $2, $4, $8, $10, $20, and I think that's about it. I've seen some 11.5-cent chips, and I believe a $12 or $11 chip back in the from like Fitzgerald's and Reno. I believe it's Reno or Las Vegas. It had a red dog on it, and it was an $11 chip. That's what it was. But anyways, today we're gonna be talking about chips like the Gold Coast 2, Boulder Station 2, Paris 2, Orleans 2, Silver Sevens 2, and Venetian 2, Santa Fe 2. I mainly have $2 chips on my desk, but I have had $4 chips in my collection. I've had 10s, I've had 20s, and so on. These are what most people call odd denomination chips. You know, it's not your typical 25-cent or 5, 1, 5, 25, 100, 500. Most people nowadays, when you go to a casino, all they know is 1s, 5s, 25s, and they call them blues or whites, reds, greens, blacks, 500s, primarily purples, orange or yellow for 1Ks, and then brown or whatever color they usually use for 5Ks. Every place kind of has a different, chip colorway for their chips, but we're talking about drop chips. Like I said, 2, 4, 8, 10, 20. And I'm gonna be primarily talking about Vegas casinos because that's kind of what I have the most knowledge about. So primarily, like I mentioned, I have $2 chips over here. Oh wow, I was zoomed in that whole time. That's pretty good. Anyways, $2 chips. What are $2 chips mainly used for? $2 chips are mainly used, at least, these ones are used in the poker room. So like the Venetian chip, it says Venetian Poker Room on the inlay, and that's because they use it in the poker room. Maybe for like a 2-4 game. You're not really going to see it in a 1-2 game because you're mainly going to be using 1s and 5s. 1s for your blinds, and then obviously you're not really going to be betting $2. So you'll toss in $2 to the pot, and then you'll continue most of the time betting 5. But let's say there's a 2-4 game, or maybe like a 4-8 game. That's where you might use the 2s. Same thing goes with the Santa Fe. I believe the Santa Fe does use these in their poker room. I don't see any reason to use it on the blackjack tables or anything like that. But primarily, the drop chips, they're not supposed to technically leave the poker rooms. Same thing goes for like the Sahara 4. I remember a couple years ago when the Sahara first opened, they had those Sahara 4s in the poker room. And they weren't supposed to leave, but a certain group of people walked in there and somehow talked to the poker manager. He was able to, I don't know if he, gave them to them at a larger price than the $4 that the chip was actually worth, but pulled those out of the casino, put them on eBay. Those chips were selling like $200, $250 a chip, which, because it was a new drop chip, was extremely rare. And, it wasn't supposed to technically leave the casino. Drop chips generally have a pretty strict, security on them. I'm not saying that most of them have like an RFID in them, but since they're not supposed to leave the poker room manager, whoever is in the poker room, the dealers themselves, they know they're not supposed to give them out. If a player usually asks for them, the dealer generally says no. And that's kind of the reason why mainly, they're called drop chips, because the dealer would take a certain amount of commission out of the pot, drop it into their tote box, and that's kind of where they get the rack checks on them. You might see a chip that has, let's say I'd call it a scratch on the inlay. That's ultimately called a rack check. The dealers, either they're checking the rack with the chip, they're scooting it along to make sure it's a full rack, or it gets dropped in the tote box, and on the way in the tote box, it gets scratched on the inlay. That's kind of what I've seen, what I've heard. Then you have different, drop chips, like the 10s and 20s. Wynn and Bellagio, Aria, they all have 10 20s. Aria is currently not using them because they're not running a 1020. They pulled the 20s out of play. But Win and Bellagio, they have 10s and 20s. They use those in 10-20 games, 20-40 games, etc., etc. The higher stakes you go, like a 10-20, you'll be using the 10s as your small blind, 20s as your big blind, or 10s, just throughout for big and small and big blind. But for like the 20-40 games, you're going to be using the $20 chips, right? Like 60-80, same thing. And then Bellagio also has a 3-6 game where they use $3 chips. And I believe that's it for Bellagio. They have 1s, 3s, 5s, 25s, 10s, 20s, 100s, and so on. Win has a 10 and 20. Aria had a 10 and 20 as well. Back in the OG days of Bellagio, they also had the 10 and 20, and those were Poker Room specific chips. I think I did a video on that maybe like a month or two ago, but that's ultimately kind of where you get the drop chip. The whole meaning is, the dealer takes a commission out of the pot. It's a drop to their toke box as a tip, and that gets dropped as a commission based on, the pot value, what's in the pot, maybe what's going on in the game, etc., etc. The other denominational chips, like, how would I explain, like a 2 or 250? 250s were used in blackjack when they were paying 3-2. That's how you'd pay blackjack, because let's say you bet, $5, you'd ultimately get, let's say if you bet $5, you would be getting, $7.50 back or whatever it was, or, $12.50, or I'm not really sure exactly how it goes, but most of you watching, you probably know, you can correct me in the comments, but that's back in the day they used to do 250 chips. They don't do 250 chips anymore. Hardly do you ever see a casino that's still running a 3-2, like a blackjack pays 3-2. Most places are paying 6-5, so 250 chips are, completely gone. That's why you only see 1s, 5s, 25s, 100s, 500s, etc. on the tables. But $2 chips, especially at Venetian, you do see those in play. Bellagio, you see $3 chips being used. Win, 10 and 20. Bellagio, 10 and 20. And then I believe there's a couple other places, but those are primarily the main. If you want to see a 10-20 game or a 3-6 game, 4-8, 2-4, whatever it is, those are the places to go because they're still using them. Not a lot of casinos use odd denominational chips because it's odd. You have to run these specific games, the specific crowd. It's a lot easier for a casino just to run, a standard, let's say 1-2-2-5 game in a poker room where most people know what they're doing. You don't need odd denominational chips, and it's a lot easier for everybody else. But it is very cool when casinos do use odd denominational chips because it spices things up. There's people in hobbies that they want to collect different things that most people don't collect. And that's where, like I started collecting, I've talked about it on my channel before, but casinos that I've been to as a kid, and then I started collecting odd denomination chips. So that's where I got a Win 10, Bellagio 3, Bellagio. I went to the Bellagio in person and bought myself a 20 and a 10, I believe, and then a few other ones as well. But some of these, like most people in the collector hobby, they probably know the Gold Coast 2 isn't, the easiest chip to get. Silver 7s 2, probably the same thing. Orleans 2, probably the same thing. I think the Orleans also has a $4 chip, I think. But there's a lot of these chips, they're a lot harder to get than some of them. The Paris 2s, I've seen racks and racks and racks of. Gold Coast 2, always see singles. Never see racks or anything equality of that. Paris 2s, they're in racks out there. Venetian 2s are out there in racks. Boulder 2s are out there in racks. And, the reason they're out there in racks is because they're pretty looking. They have nice edge spots. They have nice base colors. And like the Paris, the Paris is running the WSOP with Horseshoe. You can just walk in there, buy a rack of 2s, and walk out if you wanted to. Buy a rack of 1s, take them home. Buy 4 racks of 1s, take them home. You don't need to necessarily play with them. But yeah, that's ultimately the story of odd denomination chips, drop chips, whatever you want to call them. There is a unique story for them, something that most people don't know about. It's been a kind of a mystery the last couple of years. Most people who go to poker rooms, they know the story, they know how they work. But the outsiders that don't play poker, that are in the hobby, they've always wondered. And it took me a while to understand what the ruling or what they're used for. but once I figured it out, it's pretty simple. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please drop a like. If you have any comments down below, if you yourself have any drop chips, put those down below. I know there's quite a few of you guys that only collect odd denomination chips, and it's super cool to, you know, hear what you have, see what you have, especially like on Facebook. You can post pictures, so do that if you do. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed, and if you're new here, please consider subscribing, share the video with your friends and families, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace. Ain't nobody like me. Ain't nobody